The hunting party materialized through the quantum fold just as the twin suns began their descent. Rovak, pack leader of the Threnix warriors, felt his crest flatten against his skull the moment his boots touched home soil. Something was wrong. The den should have been alive with the chittering calls of their young, the protective growls of the brood watchers. Instead, an eerie silence hung over the crystalline structures like a burial shroud. "Spread formation," Rovak commanded. His translator device barely needed, as his pack understood his body language. 8 warriors fanned out, plasma rifles raised, moving with predatory grace toward the central nursery dome. The scene that greeted them defied comprehension. A human, of all the galaxy's species, stood at the nursery entrance, covered in ichor and blood. The strange biped held what appeared to be a primitive metal pipe in both hands, chest heaving with exertion. Around her lay the corpses of at least 15 Kresh devourers, their chitinous bodies broken and smoking. The creature's acidic blood had eaten through portions of the ground, creating small craters of destruction. But what froze Rovak's triple-jointed legs wasn't the carnage. It was the scene behind the human. 23 Threnix cubs, every single youngling from their den, huddled together in a protective cluster. They were alive. Frightened, but alive. Some of the older cubs had positioned themselves around the smaller ones, mimicking the defensive postures they'd been taught but never expected to use. The human's eyes locked onto Rovak. They were brown. He noted absently the color of fertile earth on dozens of worlds he'd conquered. Those eyes held no fear, only exhaustion, and something fiercer. Defiance, perhaps. Or determination. "Your timing could have been better," the human said, her translator rendering the words in perfectly accented Threnix high speech. She lowered the pipe slightly but didn't drop it. "Another wave hits in approximately 4 minutes, if the pattern holds." Rovak's second-in-command, Shara, moved forward with her weapon trained on the human. "Explain yourself, alien. How did you come to be in our den?" The human, small by Threnix standards, barely reaching Rovak's chest plates, had the audacity to laugh. It was a tired, slightly unhinged sound. "Cargo ship, malfunction, crashed about 6 kilometers north. I was looking for help when I heard the cubs screaming." She gestured to the Kresh corpses. "Found these things trying to get into your nursery. Your security grid was down." "Impossible," Shara hissed. "Our defensive systems are impenetrable." "Yeah, well, tell that to the Kresh tunnel network under your eastern foundation." The human pointed to a collapsed section of flooring near the nursery's rear wall. "They've been digging for what looks like weeks. Today, they finally broke through." Rovak approached slowly, studying the human with new interest. Her clothing was torn, revealing wounds that should have incapacitated most species. Chemical burns from Kresh acid marked her arms and legs. One eye was swollen nearly shut. Yet she stood firm, weapon ready, positioned between his cubs and any potential threat. "You are Kira Hale," he said, accessing his tactical database. "Engineering specialist. Your transport was reported missing 3 cycles ago. Guilty." She swayed slightly, caught herself. "Look, we can do introductions later. Right now, you need to..." The ground trembled. From the collapsed tunnel, clicking sounds echoed upward, dozens of Kresh mandibles, communicating in their hive language. Rovak's decision took less than a heartbeat. "Shara, evacuate the cubs to the secondary shelter. Tactical team, collapse that tunnel. All warriors, defensive perimeter." He turned to Kira Hale. "You, inside. You've done enough." The human's jaw set in that peculiarly stubborn way her species had. "With respect, pack leader, I've kept them alive this long. I'm not stopping now." Before Rovak could respond, the Kresh came. They erupted from the tunnel like a nightmare given physical form, all chitin and acid and mindless hunger. Rovak's warriors opened fire, their plasma rifles turning the first wave into smoking ruins. But more came. Always more. Kira Hale moved with a warrior's instinct that surprised him. She didn't have the Threnix's natural armor or claws. She didn't possess their enhanced reflexes or combat breeding. What she had was something else entirely. A terrible, beautiful refusal to yield. She fought with her improvised pipe, with rocks, with pieces of broken Kresh carapace. When a devourer got past Rovak's left flank, she was there, driving a shard of crystalline debris through its sensory cluster. When another tried to circle behind the cubs, she intercepted it with a kick that shouldn't have had enough force to matter but somehow did. Humans, Rovak remembered from his military briefings, came from a death world. High gravity, volatile weather, predators that hunted them for millennia. They didn't evolve as apex predators. They became apex predators through sheer, bloody-minded persistence. The battle lasted 7 minutes. To Rovak, it felt like hours. When the last Kresh fell, when his warriors had collapsed the tunnel and sealed it with plasma forge, when the cubs were confirmed safe and the perimeter secured, that's when Kira Hale finally dropped. Rovak caught her before she hit the ground. She weighed almost nothing in his arms. This small human who had stood against impossible odds. Her translator crackled weakly. "Cubs, okay? They are safe," Rovak assured her, carrying her toward the medical bay. "Because of you. Good." Her eyes drifted closed. "That's good." 3 cycles later, when Kira Hale woke in the healing chamber, she found herself surrounded by Threnix cubs. They had refused to leave her side, the medical staff reported, maintaining a constant vigil over the strange alien who had protected them. Rovak stood at the chamber's entrance, watching his cubs curl around the human with complete trust. In his culture, such a bond was sacred, forged in the protection of the pack's most vulnerable. There was a word for it in high speech that had no direct translation: Den Guardian. One who risks everything for cubs not their own. "Kira Hale," he said formally, his crest raised in respect. "My pack owes you a debt that cannot be measured. You fought for our young when you could have fled. You stood when any reasonable being would have fallen." The human smiled, wincing at her still healing wounds. One of the cubs, small, barely 3 months old, chirped softly and nuzzled against her hand. "Reasonable is overrated," she said. "Besides, nobody messes with kids on my watch. Universal rule." 2. Rovak felt something shift in his understanding of the galaxy. Humans were classified as a young species, barely spacefaring. Technologically primitive by galactic standards. They had no natural weapons, no armor, no obvious evolutionary advantages. What they had, he realized, was something far more dangerous. An indomitable will and a moral compass that pointed toward protecting the vulnerable, even at cost to themselves. "When you are healed," Rovak said, "we would be honored if you would remain with our pack, as Den Guardian." Kira Hale looked at the cubs surrounding her, at the warriors who now regarded her with respect rather than suspicion. At this unlikely home she'd stumbled into, while lost and broken. "Yeah," she said softly. "Yeah, I think I'd like that." The pack had returned to an empty den and found a human standing guard. In doing so, they discovered something the galaxy was only beginning to learn. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their tactics. It was their refusal to abandon those who needed them most.